When my husband of 22 years left me for a younger woman, I didn't just lose a marriage. I lost my identity. My friends stopped calling. My in-laws treated me like a stranger. My own sister told me to get over it and stop being so dramatic. They all saw the tears, the sleepless nights, the woman who couldn't get out of bed. They whispered behind my back that I was broken, that I'd never recover, that I was weak. And for a while, they were right. But what they didn't know was that divorce doesn't just break you. Sometimes it breaks you open. And what comes out is something they never saw coming. Hello. Welcome to Hurt Stories. There are moments in life that split time into before and after. For me, that moment came on a Tuesday afternoon in October. The kind of Tuesday that was so ordinary, so unremarkable, that I would never have thought to remember it. Except that I remember everything about it now. The way the light slanted through the kitchen window, the sound of the neighbor's dog barking, the smell of the coffee I'd just poured, and the look on my husband's face when he walked through the door 2 hours early. His name is Richard, was Richard. We'd been married for 22 years. 22 years of building a life together. 2 children, now grown and gone. A house in the suburbs with a garden I'd planted myself. A routine so comfortable, so predictable that I thought it would last forever. I thought that was what forever looked like. He sat down at the kitchen table. He didn't kiss me hello. He didn't ask about my day. He just sat there, staring at his hands, and I knew. I don't know how I knew, but I did. Before he opened his mouth, I knew. He said he wasn't happy. He said he hadn't been happy for a long time. He said he'd met someone else. Her name was Brooke. She was 29. She worked in his office. She made him feel alive again. He was sorry. He was so sorry. But he was leaving. I remember thinking how strange it was that he used the word alive. As if the past 22 years had been some kind of death. As if I had been the one killing him, slowly, day by day, with my ordinary Tuesdays and my home-cooked meals and my unwavering loyalty. He moved out that weekend. He took his clothes, his books, his golf clubs. He left the furniture, the photo albums, and a hole in my chest the size of our marriage. He also left a stack of bills on the counter and a note that said he'd figure out the finances later. Later, that was the last I heard from him for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of silence while I tried to figure out how to be a person whose entire life had just been erased. The first thing I learned about divorce is that it's not just an emotional event, it's a physical one. My body forgot how to work. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I'd lie in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, feeling my heart pound in my chest like a trapped animal. During the day, I'd walk through the house like a ghost, touching things. His chair, his side of the closet, the coffee mug he'd left in the sink, as if they could somehow bring him back. I lost 12 pounds in the first month. My friends told me I looked gaunt. My sister told me to pull myself together. My children called from college, worried, and I lied and said I was fine. I was not fine. I was drowning. But here's the thing about drowning. People on the shore can see you going under. And some of them will throw you a rope. But others just watch. And some, the ones you least expect, start placing bets on how long it will take for you to disappear. In the weeks after Richard left, I learned who my real friends were. The list was shorter than I expected. My so-called best friend, Karen, called exactly once. She said all the right things, how sorry she was, how she couldn't believe he'd do this, how she was there for me if I needed anything. But then she didn't call again. A few weeks later, I saw a photo on social media. Karen and her husband at a dinner party, with Richard and Brooke. All of them smiling, toasting, having a wonderful time. Karen had chosen. She'd chosen the fun couple, the young couple, the couple that wasn't drowning. My other friends followed suit. The invitations stopped. The phone stopped ringing. I'd see them at the grocery store, and they'd give me that tight, pitying smile, the one that says, "I hope you're okay, but please don't tell me if you're not." I became a cautionary tale. The woman whose husband left her. The woman you avoid at parties because her pain might be contagious. And then there was my family. My sister, Patricia, is 3 years older than me. We've never been close, not really. She's always been the successful one, the put-together one, the one who married a banker and lives in a house with a pool. When Richard left, she showed up at my door with a casserole and a lecture, summarized through Deanna's narration. She told me I needed to stop mopping. She told me it wasn't attractive. She told me that men leave, it's what they do, and I needed to get over it and move on. When I tried to explain how I was feeling, she cut me off. She said I was being dramatic. She said some people have real problems. She said at least I had the house, at least I had my health, at least I didn't have cancer. She made my pain feel like an indulgence, a weakness I was choosing instead of fighting. My mother was worse. She called me every Sunday like clockwork, and every Sunday she found a new way to make it my fault. Had I been paying enough attention to him? Had I let myself go? Had I been too difficult, too demanding, too cold? She never said the words, but I heard them anyway. You drove him away. This is on you. And Richard's family? They disappeared entirely. His mother, who I'd spent 22 years hosting for Christmas, cooking her favorite meals, remembering her birthday, buying her gifts, she never called. Not once. I heard through a mutual friend that she'd taken Brooke to lunch, that she'd posted a photo of them together with a caption, "So happy to welcome this lovely girl to the family." 22 years. A race like I never existed. But the worst, the absolute worst, was my boss. I'd worked at the same marketing firm for 15 years. I was good at my job, reliable, hardworking. I turned down promotions because they would have required more travel, and Richard didn't want me to travel. I'd sacrificed my career for a marriage that was now dead. My boss, a man named Gerald who I'd considered a friend, called me into his office about 6 weeks after Richard left. He said he was concerned about me. He said I seemed distracted. He said my productivity was down. He said maybe I needed some time off, or maybe I needed to consider whether this was still the right fit. I was being pushed out. Not fired, nothing so clean. Just gently, politely, professionally encouraged to leave. Because my grief was inconvenient. Because my pain made people uncomfortable. Because the strong, reliable Diana was now weak, and weak people don't belong in the workplace. I took the severance package. I didn't have the energy to fight. I went home, sat on my couch, and stared at the wall for 3 days. I was 47 years old, alone, unemployed, and apparently so weak that everyone around me could smell it like blood in the water. They thought I was broken. They thought I was finished. And for a while, I thought so too. I hit bottom on a Thursday night in January. It was cold, the kind of cold that seeps through the windows and settles in your bones. I hadn't left the house in 4 days. The mail was piled up. The dishes were piled up. I was wearing the same sweatpants I'd been wearing since Monday. I was sitting on the floor in the living room, my back against the couch, staring at nothing. The TV was on, some show I wasn't watching, and I started thinking about how easy it would be to just stop, to stop trying, to stop pretending, to stop getting up in the morning and facing a world that had made it clear I didn't matter anymore. I thought about my children. They were the only reason I got out of bed, but even that was starting to feel like a burden. They called and I lied. They visited and I performed. I was an actress in my own life, playing the role of getting better while inside I was crumbling. That night I looked in the bathroom mirror and didn't recognize the woman looking back. She was gaunt. Her eyes were hollow. She looked old. She looked defeated. She looked exactly like what everyone thought I was. And something in me snapped. Not in a bad way, in a way that felt like waking up. I stared at that woman, that stranger, and I thought, is this it? Is this how my story ends? Not with a bang, not with a fight, but with a whimper on a bathroom floor. I thought about all the people who had written me off. Richard with his 29-year-old girlfriend, Karen with her dinner parties, my sister with her lectures, my mother with her blame, my boss with his gentle push out the door. They all thought I was weak. They all thought I'd curl up and disappear. And the thing is, I almost did. I came damn close. But standing there, looking at that hollow-eyed woman, I made a decision. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. I wasn't going to be their cautionary tale. I wasn't going to be the woman who let divorce destroy her. I was going to be the woman who came back from the dead. The next morning, I got up. I showered. I put on real clothes. I made my bed. And then I sat down at my kitchen table with a notebook and a pen, and I made a list. It was a simple list. Things I needed to do to survive: find a job, sell the house, get a lawyer, stop crying, start living. The lawyer was first. I found a woman named Carla who specialized in divorces for women over 40. She was sharp, no nonsense, and when I told her my story, she didn't offer pity. She offered a plan. She explained that Richard had been hiding money. Not a lot, but enough. Little transfers over the last year into an account I didn't know about. She said we could go after him. We could fight. We could get what I deserved. I thought about it. I thought about the cost, not just financial, but emotional. Years of fighting, of bitterness, of dragging up old wounds. And I realized something. I didn't want to fight over money. I didn't want to spend another minute of my life on Richard Morgan. I wanted him gone. I wanted him to be someone else's problem. So I told Carla to take the settlement he'd offered. It wasn't fair. It wasn't half of what I deserved, but it was enough. Enough to pay off the house. Enough to have a little cushion. Enough to start over without being chained to the past. Carla thought I was crazy. She told me I was leaving money on the table, but I told her that some things are more valuable than money. My peace, my freedom, my future. The job was next. I updated my resume. I reached out to old contacts. I went on interviews, and I discovered something surprising. The marketing world had changed in 15 years. There were new tools, new platforms, new ways of doing things. But I had something they didn't have: experience, wisdom. A lifetime of knowing how people think, how they feel, what they want. I got a job offer from a small agency. It paid less than I used to make. It was a step down, but it was a step. And sometimes a step down is just a step toward something else. The house was harder, too big for one person, too full of memories. Every room held a ghost. The kitchen where I'd made 1,000 dinners. The living room where we'd watched 1,000 movies. The bedroom where I'd slept next to a stranger for the last 5 years without even knowing it. I put it on the market. It sold in 3 weeks, a young couple with a baby on the way. They were so excited, so full of hope. I watched them walk through the rooms, pointing out where the crib would go, where the rocking chair would fit. And I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope, not for them, for me. Because I was leaving and they were arriving, and the cycle of life was continuing whether I liked it or not. I moved into a small apartment downtown. 2 bedrooms, a balcony, a view of the city. It was mine, all mine, no ghosts, no memories, just empty rooms waiting to be filled with a new life. And slowly, painfully, I started to fill them. I bought new furniture, nothing that matched what I'd had before. Bright colors, modern lines, things that Richard would have hated. I painted the walls a deep, warm red, a color he'd always said was too bold. I hung art that I loved, not art that we'd chosen together. I played music loud. I danced in my living room. I ate dinner on the balcony, watching the sunset, and for the first time in months, I felt something other than pain. I started exercising, not because I wanted to lose weight, but because I wanted to feel strong. I joined a gym. I lifted weights. I ran on the treadmill until my lungs burned and my legs shook. I pushed myself harder than I'd ever pushed myself before, and every time I wanted to stop, I thought about all the people who thought I was weak. and I kept going. I reconnected with old friends, the real ones, the ones who'd stuck around. There were only a handful, but they were enough. We had dinner, we laughed, we talked about things that weren't my divorce. They treated me like a person, not a victim. And slowly I started to remember who I was before Richard, before the marriage, before the 22 years of being someone's wife. I was still in there, battered and bruised, but alive. About a year after the divorce, something shifted. I can't point to a specific moment, a specific day. It was more like a gradual awakening. I stopped thinking about Richard every morning. I stopped wondering if he was happy, if she was better than me, if he ever regretted his choice. I just stopped. I started thinking about me instead. What did I want? What did I need? What did I enjoy? I'd spent so long being a wife, a mother, a caregiver that I'd forgotten how to be just me. So I made another list. Things I wanted to try, things I'd always been curious about but never had time for, things that were just for me. I took a painting class. I was terrible at it, but I loved it. The feel of the brush, the smell of the paint, the way the colors mixed and swirled. I didn't care if I was good. I cared that I was doing something that made me happy. I took a cooking class. Not the kind of cooking I'd done for Richard, meat and potatoes, safe and boring. This was adventurous cooking, spicy food, exotic ingredients, dishes that exploded with flavor. I learned to cook for myself, to savor food instead of just preparing it. I traveled, just small trips at first, a weekend in a nearby city, a few days at the beach, then bigger trips. I went to Paris by myself. I sat in cafes, watched people, ate pastries, and felt absolutely, completely free. No one to answer to, no one to please, just me and the world. I started a blog. I called it The Second Act. I wrote about my journey, my struggles, my discoveries. I wrote about divorce and recovery and learning to be alone. I wrote about the people who had written me off and the people who had lifted me up. I wrote honestly, painfully, beautifully. And people read it. Hundreds of people, then thousands. Women my age going through the same thing wrote to me. They thanked me. They said my words gave them hope. They said I was brave. Brave, me, the woman who couldn't get out of bed. The woman everyone thought was weak. That's when I realized something important. Weakness isn't falling down. Weakness is staying down. Weakness is letting other people define you. Weakness is believing the lies they tell about you. I had fallen hard, but I had gotten up. I had gotten up every single time. And that wasn't weakness. That was strength. The kind of strength you don't know you have until you have no choice but to find it. You can't rebuild your life without facing the past. And eventually, the past came calling. The first was my sister, Patricia. She showed up at my apartment one evening, unannounced. She looked uncomfortable, shifting from foot to foot. She said she'd been reading my blog. She said she didn't know I'd been struggling so much. She said she was sorry. I looked at her, this woman who had told me to stop being dramatic, who had made my pain feel like a character flaw. And I felt nothing, not anger, not forgiveness, just a quiet recognition that she didn't get to show up now, a year later, and expect absolution. I told her I appreciated the apology. I told her I was doing well. I told her I hoped she was happy. And then I said I needed to go. I had a life to live. She stood there on my doorstep, mouth open, as I closed the door. It was the most powerful I'd ever felt. Then came Karen, my former best friend. She sent me a message on social media asking to meet for coffee. I thought about ignoring it, but I'm not a coward. I agreed. We met at a cafe. She looked older, tired. She told me she'd made a mistake. She told me she'd chosen the wrong side. She told me she missed me. I listened. I drank my coffee. And then I told her the truth. I told her that her betrayal had hurt more than Richard's. Because Richard was supposed to leave, He was the one who broke his vows. But Karen was supposed to be my friend. And friends don't abandon friends when they need them most. She cried, she apologized. I accepted her apology because holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. But I didn't invite her back into my life. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt, and that's okay. The hardest confrontation was with my mother. She called me on my birthday, not to wish me happy birthday, but to tell me that Richard had gotten married, that the wedding was beautiful, that Brooke looked stunning in her dress, that everyone was so happy for them. I listened to her talk and I felt the old rage rising, the old pain, the old need to defend myself, to explain myself, to make her see. But then I took a breath, and I realized I didn't need her to see. I didn't need her approval. I didn't need anything from her at all. I told her very calmly that I was happy for Richard, that I hoped he'd found what he was looking for. And then I told her that I wouldn't be taking her calls for a while, that I needed space, that I was building a new life, and she wasn't welcome in it until she could be kind. She sputtered, she protested. She told me I was being cruel. I told her I was being honest, and then I hung up. That was 2 years ago. I haven't spoken to her since. Some people will tell you that family is everything, that you have to forgive no matter what. I used to believe that. Now I believe that you have to protect your peace. And if that means cutting people out, even family, then that's what you do. 3 years after the divorce, I was a different person. Not the woman Richard left. Not the woman who couldn't get out of bed. Someone new, someone stronger. My blog had grown into something I never expected. Thousands of readers, speaking engagements, a book deal. I wrote a memoir about my journey, about falling apart and putting myself back together. It became a bestseller. Not a huge one, but enough to matter, enough to change lives. I quit my job at the agency. I started my own consulting business, helping companies understand women my age, the invisible demographic, the ones the marketing world ignores. Turns out we have money, we have power, we have opinions, and we're tired of being overlooked. I bought a house, a real house this time, not a substitute for the one I'd lost, but something new. A mid-century modern with big windows and a garden and a studio where I could paint. It was mine, all mine, no mortgage I couldn't handle, no memories I needed to escape, just me and my space and my life. And then there was love. I didn't expect it. I wasn't looking for it. I had made peace with being alone. I had built a life that was full and rich and complete without a partner. And then I met Daniel. He was a photographer. I hired him to take photos for my book cover. We spent an afternoon together, shooting in my garden, and by the end of it, we talked about everything except photography. His divorce, my divorce, his kids, my kids, his fear of being alone, my fear of trusting again. He asked me to dinner. I said no. He asked again. I said no again. He asked a third time, and I realized that my no's were fear, not desire. So I said yes. We've been together for 2 years now. It's different from my marriage. Better, not because he's perfect, he's not, but because I'm different. I don't need him to complete me. I'm already complete. He's just a bonus, a lovely, wonderful bonus. He cooks for me. He listens to me. He holds me when I'm sad and celebrates with me when I'm happy. He doesn't try to fix me because he knows I'm not broken. He just walks beside me, and that's enough. Last year, I went to a party. A charity gala, the kind I used to dread. I was there as a guest speaker, invited to share my story. I wore a red dress, Richard's least favorite color, and heels that made me feel like I could conquer the world. The room was full of people I used to know, people who had written me off, people who had chosen Brooke over me, people who had whispered behind my back that I was weak. I saw Karen across the room. She was with her husband, and they were talking too, Richard and Brooke. My heart stopped. just for a second. All the old feelings came rushing back, the betrayal, the pain, the fear. I wanted to hide. I wanted to run. But then I remembered who I was. I remembered what I'd survived. I remembered that I wasn't the woman on the bathroom floor anymore. I walked over. Richard saw me first. His face went pale. Brooke looked confused, then recognized me, and her smile froze. Karen looked like she wanted to disappear. I stopped in front of them. I looked at Richard, really looked at him. He was older, grayer. He looked tired. He looked like a man who had made a choice and was living with it. I said hello. I said it calmly, warmly, like I was greeting an old acquaintance. Because that's what he was now, an old acquaintance. Someone from my past who had no power over my present. He stumbled over his words. He asked how I was. I told him I was wonderful. I told him about the book, the business, the house. I told him about Daniel. I told him about my life, and as I spoke, I watched his face change. He hadn't expected this. He'd expected the old Diana, the weak Diana, the Diana who couldn't function without him. I wasn't her anymore. Brooke stood there, silent, clutching his arm. She looked younger than 29 now. She looked like a girl playing dress-up in a woman's world. I felt sorry for her, actually. She had no idea what she'd signed up for. She had no idea that the man she'd won was a prize that came with an expiration date. I turned to Karen. I smiled. I said it was good to see her, and then I walked away. I didn't need to say more. I didn't need to confront them or humiliate them or prove anything. My existence was proof enough. My success was proof enough. I was standing there in my red dress, in my own power, and that was more devastating than any words I could have spoken. Later that night, I got a message from Richard. It was long and rambling, full of apologies and regrets and hints that maybe he'd made a mistake. He said he'd been reading my book. He said he was proud of me. He said he missed me. I read it twice, and then I deleted it. Not because I was angry, not because I was bitter, because I simply didn't care. He was a chapter in my life that I'd closed, a book I'd finished. There was no need to reread it. So here I am, 50 years old, divorced, successful, happy. I think about that woman sometimes, the one on the bathroom floor, the one who thought her life was over. I wish I could go back and tell her what I know now. I wish I could tell her that the end of her marriage wasn't the end of her. I wish I could tell her that the people who wrote her off were wrong, that the weakness they saw was just the chrysalis before the butterfly. But I can't go back, and maybe that's okay. Maybe she had to go through that darkness to become who I am today. Maybe the pain was necessary. Maybe the fall was just the setup for the rise. If you're listening to this and you're in that dark place, I want you to hear something. You are not weak. You are not broken. You are not what they say about you. You are a woman in the middle of her own transformation, and it doesn't look pretty because transformation never does. It looks like chaos. It looks like pain. It looks like the end. But it's not the end. It's the beginning of you, the real you, the one who's been waiting in the wings, ready to step into the light. They thought I was weak after my divorce. They were very wrong. I was just getting ready. Thanks for listening. If you want to hear more story like this, please like the video and subscribe the channel. Hit the bell icon to get notified.